Are you over 40 and just now finally deciding that you want to live out loud and live an authentic life? Well, cool. You're in good company. Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? I am over 40. I'm over 50. I'm actually 56 and going to be 57 in a month. And I'm at this juncture, although I've been here for a little while, and I wanted to talk about my experiences, why I'm at where I'm at, what I'm doing now, and hopefully this will be helpful. Hopefully you can relate to some of this. Now, I've been working at jobs for a long time that just really weren't my thing, didn't float my boat, and I always wanted to be able to do something to support myself that I enjoyed. I also didn't want my life to be dominated by that. I wanted to be able to enjoy life and do the things I wanted to do. And I'm not talking about going on yachts and having, sports cars and all that kind of stuff. Although, man, actually a 1971 or 1972 GTO would be really cool. But, the idea is it wasn't the whole, I want to do what I want, life of luxury, being, kind of like Peter Pan syndrome. It's like, listen, there are things in life that I enjoy and there's things in life that I don't care about. And there's things in life I really, really value, and I want to spend my energy there and not have to live a life where I'm spending up most of my energy someplace else, being inauthentic, doing something I don't care about in order to live this other life. And I felt trapped for a very long time, and I was trapped by several factors. Probably the biggest one was my fear of risk and of doing something that would be uncomfortable and fear of failure. And there's a lot of past trauma involved with that I won't necessarily go into. But the idea was, from a very young age, it felt very bad if I failed, whether somebody was watching or not. And, I felt that things that were secure were a little bit, they were safer by definition. And so, I very often I was kind of directionless in life, and I got a job when it appeared. And so, okay, well, I guess I'll do that. And then I followed the path of least resistance, especially when they paid relatively well. But there were other parts of my life where I just wasn't living authentically. I learned not to express myself because very often I got shut down by the people around me. They couldn't understand what I was talking about. They didn't value what I was talking about. And this was from adults, from other children. When I got into work situations, the same sort of thing. People didn't think the same way I did. And expressing myself and, having a voice, being, living out loud, as my therapist would call it, being my real true self, having my own opinions and what I like to do and what I want to wear and, all those kind of things, because we get a lot of messages from everybody, from society, kind of pushing us in one direction. And, I heard a quote from somebody a little while ago, this idea that you have to decide the kind of life you want to live, because otherwise society and other people will decide for you. And this is very true. And I've lived a large percentage of my life like that. And I finally decided, well, enough is enough. And no, this is not going to be a really, heavily motivational video. I'm not one of those people. And, there are people that are very, very driven and very, very focused. And, I can be that way to a certain extent, but I don't necessarily want to turn into one of those people either, where it's all about my goals and, pushing people out of the way and just, no, I'd like to have a holistically balanced life. But there's things I value that I wasn't putting my energy into. I find myself at my heaviest weight again, 230, maybe 231. If you watch this channel for a long time, you can see it when I was skinnier, not so long ago. And I feel much better when I'm doing that. It feels much more authentic. Just to live that way. It feels much more authentic to go outside and hike an awful lot, to do those sorts of things. But I just got so tired, from doing other things. But, part of the danger when you do this kind of assessment and say, where am I right now? Because it's really important to do these assessments. I'm no stranger to doing these kind of assessments. Well, back up a little bit. I've had that critical voice in my head for a long, long time. That one that's just telling me, you're doing this wrong, you're doing that wrong. I'm not talking about that. That's a pathological kind of self-assessment and that negative self-talk, which I'm very, very familiar with. No, I'm talking about the honest assessment where you figure, okay, what am I, where am I right now? What's going to happen if I keep on going in that direction? What are the things that I don't like about my situation, about my life, about, the results I'm getting, what I'm doing? What would I really want instead? Having the kind of courage to be bold, because I'm the kind of person that's really scared of making goals, petrified, I freeze right up. As far as like fight, flight, there's also freeze, and I just freeze right up and my mind goes blank. And it's a lot of times because I don't believe that I deserve them or that I can actually achieve them. So why have those goals in the first place? It's unrealistic, And that's a crippling mentality that I struggle with. I don't know if you struggle with that or if you can relate to that, but it can be really, really crippling. Mastery is like that, but it's something that I found that I needed to overcome. But, making those kind of, inventories, okay, where am I? What do I need to change? And, how can I change this? What steps can I take to go in a direction that's more in line with me and my values and who I want to be and being my authentic self, whatever that might be, in whatever way you want to live your life or the things you value, that kind of stuff. That's the really important stuff. Hey, we got a little dog here. If you hear the fans, it's because he just opened the door. That kind of thing. And I'm no stranger to that. It's very easy to, get into a position where I can just beat myself, where you can beat yourself up and say, oh my God, I'm 56. There's no time left. Of course there is. But I should have done this stuff 10 years ago or 20 years ago. But the realistic thing is, as a friend of mine is very fond of reminding me, is, 10 years from now, Ivan, you're going to be 66, regardless of what you do. So you might as well do the thing that you really want to do and go in the direction you want to go. So, there's no use looking back and saying, beating myself up and saying, oh gosh, I wish I did it then. Because then it just leads to no action and feeling of hopelessness. So no, that's not what I'm talking about. It's easy to fall into that trap. The other thing it's really easy to do is to forget the other accomplishments I've made along the way. When I'm saying I've just now decided to, make some changes and live more authentically and do something about, my situation in all these different areas, that's not true. I've made huge choices beforehand. When I was 44, I got involved in recovery, which was a profound change in my life because my life was in shambles and I'd made a bunch of decisions that got me into that predicament. And yes, there was also, proclivities and, trauma and what have you, and the nature of the disease of addiction and all that kind of stuff. But the idea being that, like, at the end of the day, I, made some decisions to go in a different way and persevere in a process which is not easy. But I made profound changes in my life that way. Changes I did not think were possible. And changes which have, been fantastic. I've, certainly lost weight before. So I know how to do that. You get the idea. I've in a relationship that's the best relationship I've ever been in. And Susan's a fantastic partner. But I did a lot of work before I got into that relationship. If I hadn't done the work I had and hadn't, changed my perspectives and had the relationship I had, with Megan and all those kind of things, I wouldn't have been prepared to be a good partner to Susan. And so we found each other at the exact right time. And, we both kind of prepared for that relationship. But, there's a lot of work I put in. There's a lot of things I looked at and said, okay, this is what I do want. This is what I don't want in a relationship. This is what I'm willing to, or not willing to live with. I'm not willing to live with all these red flags and pretend like they're going to go away. And, be more selective with who I wanted to spend my time and my life with. I made other decisions about, like, well, who do I want to play role-playing games with? That kind of thing. And that's been great, and that took some time. I've certainly lived out loud and lived authentically in other areas. I've, made, decisions to pursue, I think, the thing is, the things that this channel covers, like role-playing games and, like, playing bass guitar, these are also ways I live authentically and live out loud. Pursuing the role-playing game thing again and enjoying that. It's been fantastic, especially knowing myself and knowing, like, how I want to play and not settling for, we're just playing, it'll be fine. But, playing with the right people, playing the right types of games, playing in the manner that makes, me happy. And, getting back into playing music after putting it down for a little while and really kind of going gung-ho with that and going from full stop for a while, especially after I cleaned up, to playing like 80 plus gigs a year for the past couple of years. And, less than that the couple of years before that, but really kind of going full throttle. These are things where I've decided to live authentically and live out loud, and I've taken steps to do that. And I'm still refining, like, well, who do I play with now? And, maybe cut some things out of my life that aren't working as far as who I'm playing with, and, making some other decisions in terms of who I want to play with and what kind of music I want to play with. You get the idea. You can look at your own life and see examples of doing stuff like that as well. I don't believe that anybody's just sat there and done absolutely nothing positive. You have to look hard sometimes, Like I have to look harder sometimes, but it's there. It's there. So the idea is like, it's not too late. Is it scary? Yes. I mean, there's things I'm looking at which are, I'm not about to quit my job until I, develop another livelihood. That's something that I like. But I mean, there's risk of failure. There's risk of feeling foolish. There are risks of like, gosh, what if I do succeed and I quit my job and then something happens? And I'll tell you what, today, I'm not sure why, but my boss no longer works for the company. We had, a meeting that we got called into by her boss, and I just talked to her and him yesterday, and then I got an email. And so I had no idea, but signs are pointing to maybe she got let go, and nobody knew it was coming. There are no guarantees. Even if you're in a job that, is fantastic. I mean, or you just get laid off or the company goes belly up. I have friends right now who need to get a job because their company just went belly up. There are no guarantees. It's kind of an illusion that we tell ourselves, that I've told myself, well, this is safe. And pursuing what I really want to do, well, that's not safe. The truth is, nothing's safe. So if nothing's safe, I might as well go do the stuff I really want to do. What about you? What's holding you back? And yes, I understand. If you're still with me after 11 minutes, you're a champion. I understand there's things like persistence are real. The idea is a very observable fact and phenomenon that, in various societies, that they are not meritocracies. We don't live in meritocracies. We're told that. That, people, if you look at where their parents were, socioeconomic and all these things, and you look at where the kids are, there's a level of persistence that happens. It's very, very difficult to break away from that. And this goes on for generations. Yeah, that's true. But there's outliers. And, at this point, I'm like, well, why the hell shouldn't I be one of the outliers? Or at least try to be one of the outliers, even at my advanced age. It's like Grandma Moses didn't start painting until she was 102, right? Whatever it is. So, hey, if you're under 40, good for you. Make it as, if you think, I'm done with this, I'm going to live authentically and figure out what that is, good. But, if you're like me, you're a little more seasoned, and you're saying, I think I just can't do this regular crap anymore. I can't just live the life that I'm supposed to live or that I've been conditioned to live, and it's not working for me. Something's really, really wrong. A lot of people are just living these lives of quiet desperation. And if I could just make it to the way, I'm just numbing themselves in whatever way, whether it's through alcohol and drugs, whether it's through like scrolling through your phone, whether it's just watching Netflix, whatever happens to be. And I don't want to do that anymore. I I want to actually participate and, live the rest of my life the way I want to, damn it. And you should too. So what do you think about this? Are you at this cusp? Have you gone past this cusp? And what are you working on? I'd like to hear from you. And if you think it's too late, it's not. I guarantee you it is never too late to make the change you want to. And, if you've got an itch to do something creative, you should scratch it. Go do it.